All right, so moving on to the next segment, I'll be sharing my AFC and NFC championship games this weekend in the for the NFL playoffs. So the winners of these two respective games will be playing in this year's Super Bowl in New Orleans, representing the AFC and the NFC. Times are getting tough. We're down to the final stretch of the NFL season, down to our final four teams. So let's start off with the NFC game. You have I apologize. I threw it up in my mouth a little bit because as a Dallas Cowboys fan, this one hurts. But you have the second-seeded Philadelphia Eagles taking on the sixth-seeded Washington Commanders for the NFC Championship, which makes me sick to my stomach. But as I digress, this is the third time that these respective teams have matched up against each other this year. And the series is tied 1-1. Now, the Eagles defeated the Washington Commanders in the first matchup by a score of 26-18 on a Thursday night edition of NFL football in November. Then the Commanders defeated the Eagles by a score of 36-33 a month ago, Week 16. But in that game, Jalen Hurts went down early in the game in the first quarter with a concussion. So after the first quarter, in that game, you had Kenny Pickett balling out against Jaden Daniels, where the Commanders won that game 36-33. So the series tied 1-1. These are the blueprints I have for these respective teams to follow if they want to punch their tickets in New Orleans to represent the NFC as the NFC champions and play in this year's Super Bowl. So let's start off with the Commanders. I think the Commanders got to pass all over this Philadelphia Eagles secondary. I know it's a hard offensive coordinator versus defensive coordinator matchup of Cliff Kingsbury versus Vic Fangio this week in the NFL for the NFC Championship. But I feel like Jaden Daniels is going to have to pass the ball against this Philadelphia Eagles secondary. Now, Stafford did have success in the divisional round, having over 300 passing yards, 2 passing touchdowns against this Philadelphia Eagles secondary in the snow. Now, last time Jaden Daniels faced this same exact Philadelphia Eagles secondary, he did have a total of 5 passing touchdowns with a game-winning drive. So it's not impossible to drive the ball and get pass happy against this Philadelphia Eagles defense. And I think that could be a good key ingredient, a good element for success if Jaden Daniels could get going passing the ball against this Philadelphia Eagles defense. Now, next, I think for defensively, the Commanders are going to have to load the box. The front seven is going to have to play. They're going to have to build a wall to stop Saquon Barkley. It's been impossible to stop Saquon Barkley this year. Yes, he's Mr. 2K, Mr. 2,000 rushing yards. But in order for the Commanders to have a flying chance, they got to find a way to slow down Saquon Barkley. And if you find a way to slow down Saquon Barkley and shut down the run, that opens the door for number one, Jalen Hurts to beat you down the field. And if they can find a way, it's going to take some magic. If they can find a way to stop Saquon Barkley, stop the running game, and make number one Jalen Hurts beat you, I'm not sure if they're going to play conservative passing-wise, because let's just say if they do take the run away. Watching Kellen Moore play call for this Philadelphia Eagles team, since Jalen Hurts has returned from this concussion that he suffered against the Commanders Week 16, it seems like they've been conservative in the passing game. You look at his performance against the Green Bay Packers, under 200 yards passing, under 180 passing yards, actually. Then you look at last week against the Rams, under 180 passing yards once again. So I'm looking at somebody that I'm looking at this defense, they can find a way to shut down Saquon Barkley, make them pass the ball, and they could possibly get turnovers because they picked off Jared Goff a good amount of times last week, forcing him to throw 3 interceptions in the win against the Detroit Lions. So I think if they could pass the ball against the Philadelphia Eagles defense with Jaden Daniels, who has been phenomenal and sensational as of late, if they could load the box and find a way to stop the running game of Saquon Barkley, stop the bleeding at least to the point where he just doesn't take over the game, and they make the Philadelphia Eagles pass the ball and make Jalen Hurts beat them and create turnovers, I think the Commanders have a really good shot of winning this game. Now, for the Philadelphia Eagles, they're going to have to feed Mr. 2K, Mr. 2000 Saquon Barkley. Had 2,000 rushing yards, has been hard to stop for the Philadelphia Eagles all year long and has played phenomenal in the first two playoff games against the Packers and the Rams. So that's going to be the bread and butter. Give Saquon Barkley the ball, put his foot on the gas pedal early, and let him run wild against this Washington Commanders defense. Now, I just got on the Commanders of making Jalen Hurts beat him. Well, eventually, they're going to have to pass the ball if they want to win a Super Bowl. It might get him past the Commanders this week of letting Jalen Hurts play conservative, but eventually they got to get Jalen Hurts passing the ball, get him going effectively down the field once again. So you might as well open the playbook and let him get going this week. Let Jalen Hurts air it out. Let him get those wide receivers like A.J. Brown, who's been reading a book on the sidelines, not in the media. He's in the media, just not pouting for the ball like he normally would. But you got to get these wide receivers like A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, Dallas Goedert. You got to get these pass catchers going in the passing game eventually. It can't all be Saquon Barkley. You can't play conservative the entire duration of the NFL playoffs. So I think it's going to be important for them to get going, passing the ball. And last but not least, I think this Philadelphia Eagles defensive pass rush needs to get sacks and get defensive stops. Now, a big reason why they shut down the Green Bay Packers effectively in the wild card was due to the pass rush, was due to their defense, was due to the fact of getting turnovers. They made Jordan Love very uncomfortable out there in the wild card game, forced him to throw 3 interceptions. And then the defense got the important sacks when needed last week against the Rams. They also got a collective amount of turnovers, two forced fumbles in the win against the Rams as well. So I think if the defense comes alive, the pass rush gets alive, gets under Jaden Daniels, gets him under pressure, gets sacks, and they create turnovers, they got a good chance of defeating the Commanders. But with that being said, I'm going to go with the Eagles to defeat the Commanders, to punch their ticket to the Super Bowl as NFC champions. Now, as a Dallas Cowboys fan, this is not something you want to see because two teams that I hate and despise are going to make the Super Bowl. One of them are going to make the Super Bowl. But on an unbiased standpoint on this podcast, I got to talk good about them this week. But I think the Eagles will defeat the Commanders. I just think that the fact that nobody has slowed down Saquon Barkley all year long, he's just going to continue until he gets them to the Super Bowl. So I don't see the Washington Commanders front seven slowing down Saquon Barkley. I think the Philadelphia Eagles defense, their pass rush is going to come alive, having Jaden Daniels under pressure, possibly getting some sacks, possibly creating some turnovers. They forced 6 turnovers in their first 2 playoff games and their victories against the Packers and the Rams in the wild card and divisional rounds. So I think Jaden Daniels is going to put up a fight. He's been phenomenal, sensational all year long, duplicating that to his playoff success, defeating the Bucs and the Lions. But I think it's just going to be too much for this Washington Commanders team to handle, trying to slow down Saquon Barkley, and then the defense taking them out of this game as well, taking the Commanders offense out of this game as well. And I like Vic Fangio defensively, the defensive coordinator for the Eagles, winning the OC versus DC matchup, him getting the better of Cliff Kingsbury. I like the Eagles winning this game and punching their ticket to New Orleans for the Super Bowl this year. So that brings us to the AFC. We will have the first seeded, reigning defending Super Bowl champions of the Kansas City Chiefs taking on the second seeded Buffalo Bills, as the Chiefs are on their quest to becoming the first team in NFL history to three-peat in the National Football League. Now, even though the Chiefs are 15-2, their only loss with starters on the field this year was against the Buffalo Bills. And that was when the Bills defeated them earlier on in the year by a score of 30-21. So this is going to be their second matchup of the year. Now, crazy stat for you guys. Every time I get the chance on this podcast to talk about a Patrick Mahomes versus Josh Allen matchup, I call it the modern-day AFC matchups that we've seen in the past of Tom Brady versus Peyton Manning. But a crazy stat, Patrick Mahomes versus Josh Allen. Josh Allen is actually 4-1 against Patrick Mahomes in the regular season. But Patrick Mahomes is 3-0 against Josh Allen in the playoffs. So something's got to give here. We're going to see what happens in this game. But blueprints to victory, starting off with the visitors of the Buffalo Bills. Josh Allen has to play well and not create turnovers. Now, this year might have been Josh Allen's best year as a pro. He might win his first MVP, and you're talking about, in the most important stat category for Josh Allen his whole entire career. He's been known for turning over the ball as great as he's been. But this year, his touchdown-interception ratio has been clean. And he has to continue to do that this week in the playoffs against the Kansas City Chiefs. He has to be effective passing the ball, making plays with his legs, running the ball, and has to trust the play calling of Joe Brady. If he does that, they have a good chance of defeating the Chiefs and punching their ticket to the Super Bowl. And speaking of running the ball, the Bills got to run the ball with James Cook. I mean, James Cook has been an explosive dynamite in the backfield for the Buffalo Bills all year long. And the Chiefs just gave up 149 rushing yards to the Houston Texans last week as a team. Can you imagine what James Cook, an explosive dynamite at running back, is going to do? They got a good pair of running backs out there in Buffalo anyway. And you mix that in with the RPO that Josh Allen possesses, the RPO play calling that you can get out of Josh Allen as well, they should run the ball directly at the front seven for the Kansas City Chiefs. And last but not least, this Buffalo Bills defense has to create turnovers. Now, they had 3 turnovers against the Baltimore Ravens last week. That was a big key ingredient for their victory, punching their ticket to the AFC Championship game. And in the first game, they did force Patrick Mahomes to throw a total of 3 interceptions. So that's going to be important for the Bills to win this game. Now, for the Kansas City Chiefs, the Chiefs are going to have to feed Travis Kelce the ball. The duo of Mahomes and Kelce are going to have to get going in this game. And I do like Travis Kelce matching up against these Buffalo Bills safeties of Taylor Rapp, or whether it's Taylor Rapp or Damar Hamlin that's going to be guarding Travis Kelce. I think that's a good matchup, and I think Travis Kelce could get the better of them. So, in the flat, across the middle, Patrick Mahomes should be looking for Travis Kelce as his first read progression in this game, because I think he could beat this Philadelphia Eagles safeties apart in the secondary in this matchup. Now, he's got to get these other offensive players going. I can't see quiet performances from DeAndre Hopkins. I can't see quiet performances from Xavier Worthy. They got to get going. And if you could get going passing, then that sets it up for the running game of Kareem Hunt and Isaiah Pacheco going in the running game as well. So all these dynamic playmakers that the Chiefs do have offensively, they got to get going in this ball game against the Buffalo Bills. And last but not least, the front seven has to show up to play against this Buffalo Bills team. They got to get after Josh Allen, make him stress in the pocket, create pressure, close the gap on him, get sacks, and get some 3-and-outs. I think if they could do that, the Chiefs will punch their ticket to, once again, another Super Bowl. But with that being said, I'm going to go with the Chiefs to defeat the Buffalo Bills. I think the Chiefs are going to win by a 3-point score. I like a score of 27-24 in this game. We'll see what happens. But I like them punching their ticket, representing the AFC once again to New Orleans to go for that 3-peat. But the Chiefs are nearly unbeatable at Arrowhead in the playoffs. Patrick Mahomes is 3-0 against Josh Allen in the playoffs. That's why I trust him, and I think he's going to keep the streak alive. I just don't see the Bills beating this Kansas City Chiefs team. They nearly blew a 21-10 lead against the Baltimore Ravens in the second half of that divisional round game last week. I think that exposed the Bills for some second half flaws that they need to clean up on, and I think the Kansas City Chiefs are going to be ready to go at them for all 3 phases of the ball, maybe 4 with some referee luck. But as I digress, I just think the duo of Mahomes and Kelce are just going to be too much. Like I said, I like Kelce matching up against the Bills safeties of Taylor Rapp and Damar Hamlin. I just like the Chiefs defense as well, making the plays when it matters most towards the end of the ball game to shut down Josh Allen and this Buffalo Bills offense. Give me the Chiefs to punch their ticket to another championship, to another Super Bowl, to possibly become the first team in NFL history to win 3 straight Super Bowls. But that is my NFL, AFC, and NFC game predictions for this weekend in the NFL playoffs.